County City Council for December 20th, 2021 is now in session. Roll call, please.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro,
Present.
Mr. Emery,
Here.
Mr. Goff,
Here.
Mr. Kozowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ledford. Here. Mr. Moiseo,
Here.
Mr. Prokowski,
Here.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Here.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And let us pray. Oh God, in this busy season before the celebration of the holidays begin in the next 2 weekends, we ask that you just be with us this evening as the business of Conneaut continues. Bless each of the council members and may we, as citizens of this great city, also do our part. We pray for safety, we pray for joy in this week, and we ask that you just lead all of the deliberations that are done this evening. We pray this and we ask this in the name of God. Amen.
Amen.
We'll move on to approval of the meeting minutes for December 13th, 2021. Are there any alterations or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Second.
Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford. Yes. Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
The meeting minutes for December 13th, 2021 are approved. So we have a special presentation this evening. And if Law Director Kyle Smith come forward, please.
27.
So Kyle, if you could read the certificate into the record, please.
Proclamation, whereas Kyle B. Smith began his service to the city of Conneaut as the law director for the city in 1984, serving as prosecutor and attorney for the city until 1995. Because devoting 11 years of his life to the city wasn't enough, Kyle returned as law director in 2015 and served another 6.5 years. Whereas Kyle B. Smith was an instrumental and leading force in drafting and enacting the Conneaut City Charter, which passed in November 1990 and went into effect on January 1, 1992. One could go so far as to call Kyle the legal grandfather of the Conneaut City Charter. Whereas Kyle B. Smith created, prepared, reviewed, updated, critiqued, revised, revamped, and put the finishing touches on countless agreements, contracts, projects, ordinances, easements, deeds, and civil complaints and pleadings on behalf of the city. Whereas even when sailing Lake Erie or traveling through sunny California, Kyle was available to prepare search warrants for the police department, prepare ordinances for council, and answer any of the 10,000 questions Jim threw his way. Whereas Kyle may no longer be a city employee, but he can count on calls from the law office and from the city manager to provide guidance and assistance in any number of areas of municipal law. Whereas Kyle B. Smith always performed his duties with the best interest of the employees and citizens of Conneaut in mind, and for that we thank him. Now therefore, the Conneaut City Council, on behalf of all employees and residents of the city of Conneaut, herein express its deepest appreciation and gratitude to Kyle B. Smith for his unprecedented legal services to the city of Conneaut and further wishes him the best in all of his future endeavors. Signed by all of council this 20th day of December, 2021.
Well, thank you very much. What a hug. Thank you for my wife. No, thank you.
Introduce these friends.
Some of my favorite
See, I told you you'd get another one.
Oh, good.
You only get out one easily.
No, thank you so much.
Hug or a handshake? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Say a
Why don't
few
you guys all
words.
come out here? I'd like a
Yes.
photo of this. So
Yeah.
Kyle, can you introduce who these
Yeah.
folks are?
Yes,
Definitely.
this is
Come out here, you guys.
7 years
Come up
of
here.
assistant law director. And
Move down.
And
further
John
so we
Lewis.
all can see you.
I think everybody knows Jen. I picked Jen up. Great source of wisdom and effort and friendship for a long time. And Molly, of course, everybody knows. She's been wonderful, 3 years. And I think she's one of the best choices I've seen for city employees in a long time. She's been really, well. you can- I'm sorry about that. This is Ally Haynes, who was my neighbor for a long time. And I brought her into private practice. And I think you're the reason I came back. But anyway, it's so good to see you. And she's now the assistant county prosecutor in Geauga County doing good stuff. And this is Nick Brown, who, the story with Nick is that years ago, before he was born, his mother asked me to build him a cradle. Yeah. Yes. And so, fortunately, she was 4 weeks overdue. And got it built in time. But Nick and I go back before he was even born. Oh, yeah. And he was glad when I got here. And Chris Newcomb, who I've known, his mom and I have been talking about the revolution for a long time, singing Les Mis and all those great songs.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were up here, I used to sit in the crowd and watch you.
Yeah, so used to
Yeah.
like that. And John Williams, who will, John Lewis. That's gonna happen more than just me. John Lewis will be taking over on January 1st. He is an incredible choice to be doing this. He's got good experience with the Ashtabula County and trial, and he's honest and hardworking. I couldn't ask to put the city in better hands. So I want to thank you all very much for coming out tonight, and I know you had a long drive. Hey, it was worth it. And you always have a long drive. Good to see you again. Molly, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Pam actually Pam goes back even further. I hired her when she was 17 in a law director's office, and how many years ago was that?
A lot. It was November of 1989 that I became full-time January of 91.
You were part-time.
Yes, that's what I said. I was
Okay.
part-time and I became full-time January of 91.
So this is like part of this is your life or something. But I just want to thank everybody on council and Jim, the city manager, and John Williams, and all of council. I enjoyed the last 7 years. We've had some bumps at times, but I can say after I've lived in Conneaut now for almost 40 years. And this is the best that I've seen it. And I think better days are ahead. And I got great confidence in Jim and John Arcaro, the council president, members of council, and John Lewis and everybody else. So thank you very much. And I'm always a phone call away. Thank you very much. What else? Oh,
Get it, Chris.
almost got a late person. Yeah, get a hand in here too.
I know, right?
We bombed that one.
I know, I did.
you.
Good to see you, Ally.
How you doing, Alan? Hey, Ally. Can't go very far. You're gonna stay now.
Take care. All right. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to citizen comments. Anybody signed up for citizen comments, Kyle?
No, nobody did.
Does council have any citizen comments?
Mr. Carroll, I have one, I just want entered into the record, Tina Slapnicker. Objection and opposition to the tax amendment ordinance number 102-21.
Okay.
I believe there were others, but I think most of council received those. And that one was just addressed to me, so that's why I wanted to enter it.
Okay. Okay, moving on to communications.
I just have one this evening. It is a notice from Dominion Energy in regards to the notice of the filing of a new PIR adjustment PUCO case number 21-1095-GA-RDR. That is all.
Okay. Does council have any communications? Okay, hearing none. Move on to reports of the administration, beginning with city manager, Mr. Hoxton.
Thank you, Council President Arcaro. Have a couple of quick updates tonight. Our COVID totals is provided by the Health Director, Nichelle. She has provided us with a little bit of good news. Our case numbers are down from the peak of about 119 to about 83 active cases. We still have 12 current hospitalization, and unfortunately, we've had 3 new deaths here in Conneaut in the last 7 days. And approximately the last 30 days, we've had 9 reported deaths towards the end of this year. Some of our might remind people that you can go to any of the local pharmacies. You can call our health departments at 440-593-3087 to get your booster, or if you are unvaccinated. Obviously, as the new variant is kind of moving around, it's far more contagious. Just encourage people to get vaccinated once again. I'm going to jump down into administrative meetings, negotiations. So where we stand is we have tentative agreements with USW, which is the dispatchers, and as well as the FOP. The FOP Civilian Division, FOPC, is still open. We're very close to a tentative on that. AFSCME actually just began their negotiations last week. They had their first meeting last week, kind of a late jump. And IAFF has been made an offer. They haven't responded yet. So I'm waiting on a response from their group. We also met with the healthcare committee last week. We did accept the plan as recommended to city council, which was the 8% increase option, staying with the OGBC plan. We did modify some of the characteristics of our plan to reduce costs overall from the quoted 30% increase. So I do want to say that I appreciate the employees going through the process, form fire, so we could take this out for a competitive process. It did greatly improve our healthcare renewal cost overall. So what's going to happen with these and even the two that are under tentative agreements, given the short time span, I didn't feel it was fair to bring it to council and try and shotgun it through at the end of the year. With the binding arbitration units, I have signed extensions to allow them to retro anything back to January 1, and that would be true of all of our unions. I would give them and afford them that opportunity as we proceed. So what I'm assuming is that we will probably deal with these in our January work session, and then hopefully, even if we have to have a special session, that January 10th meeting to go over those and move these forward. I feel that they're going to be relatively similar. At least they're lining up so far to be relatively similar in their overall structure in terms of the deals. Most of it focuses around the cost of living adjustment, as you would expect. There are a few pieces that are language oriented that we are discussing, but it is moving forward. The two of them are pretty much done under that tentative agreement. We're waiting for the last three. So I should know more tomorrow. We have another set date with AFSCME tomorrow. I'll let you know if we're able to come to a tentative at the end of that meeting tomorrow. So that is the look forward. Excuse me. We also had an ESID meeting, which is the Energy Special Improvement District. We did a couple of different things. Council authorized the ability of non-adjacent entities to apply to join our ESID. Ashtabula City applied to join our ESID and has a sizable project of about a $600,000 project, which they applied to participate. I would defer any further comments to Councilwoman Tammy Ledford, as she is a member of the ESID. And I'll let her talk about that and kind of what the future for the ESID looks like. I think it's all a very positive thing. It's a unique piece of financing structure that allows us to do kind of unique deals here in Northeast Ohio. Gives us a lot of competitive advantage, and it gives a lot of flexibility to businesses to structure capital for improvements, expansions, and renovations. Perfect for downtowns and other projects similar to that. Without going into each and every project here, I did want to notate that I appended a summary of a schedule change on the water treatment plant filtration improvements. We got a notice from our supplier of the Leopold filters, which is Xylem. They are having an issue, supply issues with the anthracite that they use in the filter media itself. I attached an updated schedule as well as the letter from Xylem explaining their delay and the logistics issues they're finding. You can see in that letter, it's going to push us back a couple of months, but it's not a significant delay across the entire project. It pushes the completion, however, from the middle of June, July of next year into September of next year for final completion of that project. They did name and state a delivery date based on the order that was placed, but I did want to make you aware that there's very little that we can do about it. They're unable to get the materials that they use to manufacture the filter media itself. So I wanted to make you aware of that one issue. I have also included in here the replacement criteria for the Norfolk Southern Railroad Bridge over Conneaut Creek. I've had a couple meetings with Norfolk Southern. We have some tentative agreements on parameters that are very similar to our initial offer. I've given all of that to John Lewis, as he will be dealing with it in the first couple meetings in January. So he's going to draft up that tentative agreement, and you can kind of see what our position was. I really appreciate Norfolk Southern as well as their contractor in working with us. They seem to be eager to get underway. I know they would like to start clearing and for their access road that's going to have to construct off the Old Main before March of next year. So we can talk a little bit more about it in the new year, but I wanted to start putting that in your hands, knowing that we're going to be dealing with that in the future. I also attached just the draft appendix copy of the Conneaut Gas Line Improvement Agreement on West Main Road. I already provided council these big sheet drawings of the project area. These also get attached to the agreement that spells it out. Our large reconstruction agreements are nearly identical for phase 1, 2, and 3. It's kind of mad libs, but that is on council's agenda for tonight, that we can move forward with the Dominion Route 20 Phase 3 project. So if you have any questions, please let me know about that. We've gotten 2 estimates for the Public Works roof repair. As you know, during that large windstorm, we had a significant issue with the Public Works building where a portion of the rubber roof did peel up. We've gotten 2 estimates. They're both in under 15,000 at the moment. I'm waiting on their 3rd estimate so we can start moving forward with that. The Public Works guys did go ahead and temporarily secure the building so it's not leaking and is weather tight here until we can get a permanent repair decided upon. The last item I wanted to touch upon is I just wanted to briefly review some of the major issues, major things that we've dealt with in 2021. It's been a very busy year. It's easy to forget, and I probably forgot some on this list of some of the major projects that we both started and completed in this year. Chestnut Phase 3, that was about a $850,000 total project. Water, sewer, stormwater, roadway. That was completed just about a month ago. Route 20 Phase 1 and the Lake Road 534 culvert replacement. Those were completed as painfully, if everybody recalls. Dominion Route 20 Phase 1 and Phase 2. They're pending a little bit of restoration on Phase 2, but the gas line is fully installed at this point. Lake Road Stormwater also completed earlier this year. The Dorman Road Stabilization and Chip and Seal project was completed earlier this year. And the Chestnut and Middle Resurfacing project was wrapped up this spring. And most recently, and I sent council some photos over the weekend, the paddling enhancement grant, the kayak launch at the Old Mill Bridge area was also completed this year. Actually just completed last week. So we did get quite a few things done in what was ostensibly a very tough construction year. There are going to be a couple projects like the Route 20 Waterline Phase 2 that's going to carry over from this year into next, and a few others. We also had a couple major grant awards in 2021. We had approximately $350,000 in OPWC funds awarded to us for the Broad Street rehab. We had $750,000 in the CDBG NRG Library Madison Street reconstruction project. We had another $198,000 awarded to us in the Buffalo Street Sewer project, and we had about $1.9 million awarded to us in the Healthy Lake Erie initiative this year, for a total of about $3.2 million. Those are all the major awards. There are many more minor awards that we received in 2021. A pretty admirable list, but I would say a fairly average year. We did knock the socks off of it, but we held our own, and we did a nice job securing some pretty essential dollars for the city to move some projects forward. And I'd like to say thank you to some of our collaborative partners, including the Conneaut Public Library, the Port Authority, and others that we've worked pretty tirelessly to seek out grants for the city for the betterment of the community. So without taking too much time, knowing that we have a very lengthy agenda tonight, I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions or comments for the city manager? Okay, thank you. Move on to the finance director, Mr. Williams.
I have no report this evening.
Okay. And then the law director, Mr. Smith.
I just wanted to add a couple clarifications.
Thank you very much. I was very surprised and I fumbled my way through some awkward moments there. But I particularly want to thank Pam, who I worked with for 10 years. The first time around, and a year or two the second time. Pam was a true partner in every sense of the word. And there's always feedback and collaboration and a partnership. And when she left, I was very fortunate to have Jen come in. And Jen has been just a terrific asset. I don't know that you appreciate how much she's done. She kept me on track, kept me focused, brought in chocolate when needed. And Jen has done a lot of the drafting of the ordinances and agreements. Again, it was a collaborative partnership effort. And I've just been very, very fortunate to have Pam in my life and Jen and Molly, as well as the assistant you saw. So this is all a team effort and whatever. I made some very nice comments about my proclamation. I appreciate those very much, but it's always been a team effort. I've just had a great team to work with, and that includes everybody in this room. So thank you. I'll save the rest of my report for the miscellaneous, if that's all right.
Very good, thank you. Okay, moving on to committee reports. Does anybody have a committee report? Hearing none, liaison reports. And hearing none there either. Which brings us into our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. And on the table, we have 5, which, is there any update, Mr. Smith, on any of those?
No, I think, and I was explaining this to someone earlier today, with regards to these zoning issues, I think a lot of what the planning commission was looking for was feedback from council as to the direction they were pursuing. There's some significant changes in that. And before we got to the tweaking part of it, I think the planning commission was looking forward to some comments back to make sure that you felt you're on the same page. So I would encourage more discussion and dialogue between council and the planning commission. When you're satisfied with it, I think you should then send it back to planning for their formal approval.
We took it off the table, made some
Yeah,
amendments.
yes,
Right.
that's right.
So I think it is ready
To
to go.
to 2 of
now.
them.
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, I
Well, make
think
sure
so.
you give them a lot of feedback because I think Mr. Moiseo is asking some good questions. And there's some things that need to be looked at and discussed. And I'm happy to participate in those on a volunteer basis.
So this will go back to planning.
It'll go back to planning for their formal approval.
And then what about our input at that time?
I think you should give your input on that before they come back with their formal approval.
Okay. So during a planning meeting,
So, I would hope, and I'll talk to the planning commission later this week, but I think that some more dialogue between council and the planning commission is appropriate before they formally recommend the ordinance to you.
Okay, so if you have anything additional, be sure to document those. I know that my questions were answered and those were the ones that,
I just,
We amended,
Yeah.
right?
and I just
if
have
there's any additional then.
just a question on the bed and breakfast short-term rentals on the rental or for the consecutive period rental. So that's why I just wanted to clarify or get some input on that.
Maybe it would be helpful if planning commission held one more open meeting, for public comment, and council members could come and talk about it as well.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
Because there's some significant changes as far as these conditional permits, and conditional uses. We took a lot of stuff out that was extraneous that shouldn't have been there. There should be a general standard, a general set for conditional uses generally. And then for specific ones, you may want to have
specific criteria, and that's what we've done for the chickens and the fowl, as well as for the B&B and short-term rentals.
Is council want to have another work session with them, or do you want to attend their meeting?
Our-
It's
This
easier.
is my suggestion, is for you to formulate whatever questions you have in an email and maybe send it to them, because my impression was we all were satisfied with the language.
impression as well.
Okay,
And
so
we sent it back to them.
this is
I didn't
kind
realize
of,
there was
this is
other
kind of news
questions.
to me, yeah. So we had already, like, we took these off the table, we amended them, we put them back on the table. The next step was to send these to the planning commission.
Yes.
So if there is something different than what we had
Well, and
amended,
then I think we talked about public input or public hearing
well,
also.
that has to happen.
Yeah, council will have to have their own.
Yeah,
public
we will
hearing.
have to have that. Once they approve this and send it back to us, then we will do that.
So obviously you had some additional after you reviewed it, correct?
That's when I caught this one thing,
Okay.
just in 2A on,
I was thinking, to me, it'd be like.
well, what's
to
easier?
put it-
I can shoot an email out to the commission. I mean, what's easier?
Yeah, and
Okay.
like CC us on it and
Yeah,
send it
CC
to the
everybody.
planning commission.
We have an email address for we would send that to.
Well, Rick can get it.
Terry, if you send it to myself and Molly, we will make sure it's.
And then forward
distributed
it
to
that way?
everybody.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that'll work.
But I think in addition to that, Mr. Hockaday, is then the planning commission should get the amended versions of the ordinances that
Absolutely.
we already took off the table and corrected and put back on the table.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments regarding those ordinances? Okay, now we'll move on to our third reading ordinances, which we have one, and that's 102-21.
Ordinance to amend section 192.081, credit for the other municipal taxes of the city of Pontiac codified ordinances and not declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Williams again.
This was a proposal that we would eliminate a portion of the credit. Currently, we provide 100% credit for taxes paid to another municipality. And I think I used the example last time with Ashtabula, where their income tax rate is 1.8. We offer any citizen of ours that works in Ashtabula a full 100% credit up to our rate, which is 1.65. This would reduce that credit to 50%. It would bring it to 0.825. Any additional funding, council could then allocate to the Public Works Department specifically. I would change that 1% to 0.65 as we discussed. It's passed by ordinance and you're not permitted to change that. 1% council can allocate however they wish. So I could adjust that formula to have all of the proceeds be just receipted into the Public Works Department. So that's kind of the basis of the ordinance, and it's up to council to vote on it.
Okay. Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
I have received quite a few emails and phone calls, especially this past week over this, expressing concern and the impact that it does have today on families, especially during these difficult times that families are enduring with inflation and so forth. I'm just not comfortable supporting this ordinance. As it's written.
I also had supported this wholeheartedly. It would affect my family financially too. After receiving a lot of feedback from the community, which I appreciate, I really do, and I answer every single email that I get. It did make me think what possibly input this could have on some of our residents. I will say this, and I'm also in agreement with Nick. I won't support this as it's written. I also do want to say something about what we were trying to do, and that is to give a little bit of money. It would have raised about $200,000 a year to go to our Public Works Department. Now, I have stated in the emails that I sent back to these residents that that's my number one complaint I get from residents is about how our streets are. And we were thinking that this would even the playing field a little bit. We weren't gonna do anything that wasn't being done by other communities around us. We were the only city in Asheville County that offered 100% credit. So those were my initial thoughts of it. I am thinking ahead a little bit here and starting to think about, we're gonna have a street levy coming up. And I don't want any decision we make here to negatively impact that. So one thing that I am asking, and I will reach out to every single person that wrote me, that voting no on this, and if we do not pass this, I do hope that then that will garner their support for a street levy and maybe even an increase in the street levy. We have to do something about the roads in Conneaut. And the only way we're gonna do that is to pass a street levy of greater value, because the money doesn't go as far as it did in the past. We have more roads in our city than any other city in Ashtabula County. Land-wise, we're just humongous. We have a lot of rural roads, a lot of city roads to take care of, and it's a huge, huge undertaking. So this is where I am at, that all the people that reached out to me, I want them to support a new street levy moving forward and possibly even get into an ad hoc committee, help get the word out. You know, we're gonna need support for this. So those are my thoughts. This is what I have come to over the past week. I hope it meets with my citizens' approval, the ones that voted for me, because that's who I answer to. But we do need to start thinking ahead and what we're gonna do in the future to address our Public Works Department and our roads.
And just like I stated in our last work session, all the reasons at that point, I feel we should not move forward with this, that it should be tabled. And I'm still of the opinion that we need to discuss our options and have more public input, especially with the levy or any type of tax increase that affects everybody. And I want to thank the citizens who reached out to us and expressed their thoughts and opinions. That was very important. And it helps us make our decisions. It really does.
Yeah,
So that's-
absolutely.
Yeah, and we need that, and we appreciate that. And, but again, I think we do need to look at this down the road, move forward, discuss it, have input, and do what's best for the community and for our public works department.
Any other comments?
Now, I just want to clarify one thing, and I know you brought up the street levy and it is desperately needed. But the street levy only pays for asphalt and other repairs of the streets. It does not address equipment or personnel. And
You're right.
I just want
Thank you.
people
Thank you.
to-
No, I appreciate that.
yeah, I just
Thank
want
you.
people to understand that,
Yes.
if this were passed and it's of course up to council, it would be used for equipment and personnel.
You're right.
The street levy cannot be used for that. So,
Yes, thank you, John.
well,
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Moiseo.
Mr. Carroll, I'd like to make a motion to table ordinance 102-21.
There's a motion to table ordinance 102-21. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Arcaro,
No.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff, Mr. Kozowski, Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 102-21 is tabled. Move on to our first reading ordinances and resolutions for this evening. We have 12 to consider. We will begin with 109-21.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 105-21 governing the maximum rates of pay effective as of January 1, 2022 for such positions as further described in section 1 below and not declaring an emergency.
I will apologize for this one. We dealt with this ordinance last week. And we had it corrected and then we sent Pam the wrong version to council. So we left out the zoning inspector position, which we modified mid-year this year. So we need to pass it to include that zoning inspector position as it was only part-time in years prior to 2021.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Is a motion to proceed?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule.
It's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 109-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Gazassi,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Crossi, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to move to act on ordinance 109-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 109-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Gazassi.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 109-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 110-21.
An ordinance to authorize the city manager to enter into a real estate donation agreement with the Conneaut Port Authority for the purpose of donating a 1.45 acre parcel of land, more commonly known as Dean Avenue Park, and declaring an emergency.
This was discussed at our last work session. The Port Authority, Mr. Peterson, the chairman, came and made a presentation to council earlier this spring. We batted around a couple drafts of the agreement. And we're ready to at least take a reading at a time. This is disposition of a public real estate asset. It would be my recommendation that we take these in 3 readings and do not pass anything by. We don't necessarily need to pass it by emergency. So the same is true with Mount Park, which is our successive ordinance here at 111-21. We can take those all 3 readings. I did inform both parties that we would likely take these ordinances, all 3 readings, and they would not transfer or record until the end of January or February, of which nobody had any issue or complaint with that. To address the Mallett Park one, the Asheville County Metro Parks, as you may have read in the newspaper already, looked at the agreement, was okay with that agreement. So back to council for its final approvals.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance?
All right, so that was going to be my question on both of these, as far as we don't need to declare these an emergency.
Right, it'll be as no emergency.
And Mr. Hockaday, are we able to speak, or is Mr. Peterson able to come to a meeting? I think there was a question on the Dean Avenue one as far as the reversionary clause.
He can absolutely, I'm sure he'd be happy to address any council's concerns.
Did you want to have him for a work session? Yeah. Because I thought he was going to be here that night, I think, when we initially looked at this. There was just a question on that section number 13, I believe it was.
Okay.
That was all.
Any other questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Okay, is there a motion to proceed?
So Kyle, make a motion to
Move it to second.
I think you just move it to second reading.
move it to second reading.
And then, you know, at a certain point, just don't pass it as an emergency.
All right, so then I'll make a motion to move ordinance 110-21 to second reading.
You actually don't need to make a motion. It'll move automatically.
It's automatically. Okay.
Okay, ordinance 110-21 is moved to a second reading. Move on to ordinance 111-21.
An ordinance authorizes the city manager to enter into a real estate donation agreement with the Asheville County Metro Parks Board for the purpose of donating 43.96 acres of land known as Malik Park and declaring an emergency.
Okay, you heard the city manager's explanation. Who would like to sponsor this?
Mr. Carroll, I move that, I'd like to move ordinance 111-21 to second reading.
Okay, ordinance 111-21 has been moved to a second reading. Move on to ordinance 112-21.
An ordinance authorizes the city manager to execute a gas line improvement agreement between the city of Conneaut and the East Ohio Gas Company Dominion for improvements to the West Main Road Route 20 gas line from West Wind Drive to the North Kingsville Conneaut line and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Hockenson.
Okay, we've done these before a couple of different times. This is phase 3 of this project. It'll be between West Wind Drive and the western boundary of Conneaut. Dominion East Ohio is looking to make this improvement beginning after the new year, completing that improvement by the end of March of 2022. They're trying to replace all of their intermediate pressure lines in advance of the resurfacing project that's scheduled with ODOT later on in 2022. This is our standard agreement. It places all the responsibility for maintenance of traffic as well as cost, including the cost of our inspector to be present on site throughout the construction process. Any damage or responsibilities are theirs. It's been beneficial to have that inspector on site, particularly through the downtown area where we've had countless sidewalk crossings and other issues. I think they've done a nice job in doing that. So I'm hoping we can move this along, get this passed tonight. It is our standard agreement. Any of the costs incurred by the city are reimbursable, but we do need to pay that inspector and then we are reimbursed for those costs on those projects. So hopefully we can move this forward tonight and I can tell them they can get started. The maintenance of traffic, as discussed previously, may require lane change, to move to the center of the road as this gas line and this portion of the project is about 2 to 3 foot off the southern curb of Route 20. So it might push that traffic to the center. It will always maintain 2 directional traffic throughout the entirety of the project. It will be tricky as traffic maintenance with snow and other inclement weather, which they're sure to see. We've discussed this at length and we have a plan in place, and Dominion has been very responsive to any issues that we've had in the first 2 phases of this project. So I feel comfortable moving this forward. Happy to answer any questions council may have. There is a printed set of the drawings that I've already given council available here if you would like to review them at any point.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? If not, there's a motion to proceed.
Make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 112-21.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 112-21. Is there a second?
Emergency first.
Pardon?
I believe we do the emergency first. No?
No.
Okay,
We have
my
to do the
apologies.
suspense. I'll second it though.
My apologies. Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 112-21 an emergency.
Motion to declare ordinance 112-21 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Carroll,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 112-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 112-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 112-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 113-21.
An ordinance to transfer a total of $85,000 from 101-901-59300 transfers within the general fund to the funds in the amount listed in section 1.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. Council had approved a $40,000 transfer in the 2021 budget for the street department, $40,000 for the police pension, and $32,000 for the fire. I did give you a copy of the fund report. If you look at the street maintenance department, it doesn't look at this time like it needs the transfer. However, when we get to the budget, when you look at the projected estimates, you'll see why that is needed. So even though they are not in a deficit situation at this time, it'll be used to balance next year's budget. If you look at the police and fire pensions, they're both about 27,000, almost 28,000 in the negative. There's only 20,000 for the police pension and 25,000 for the fire pension. It will not eliminate the entire negative balance, but we do have some chargebacks to the levy funds that will also pay a portion of that pension cost. So right now, I am recommending that we transfer the full 40,000 to the street department, 20 to the police pension, and 25,000 to the fire pension. And these are permanent transfers, permanent cash transfers, as opposed to the advances that are coming up later.
Any questions or comments regarding this? Is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Arcaro, to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 113-21.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 113-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo, Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Moiseo, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 113-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 113-21. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 113-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 114-21.
An ordinance to authorize advances from Fund 101 advances within the general fund to the following fund in the amounts listed in section 1.
Mr. Williams again.
Excuse me, if you look at the fund report, you'll notice Fund 322 has a $7,000 negative balance. And Fund 302, the Route 20 water line, has a $49,000 negative balance. We will draw those funds through OPWC, but at this time, we need a temporary transfer or a temporary, advance from the general fund. The next one is from the water fund. These will be repaid once the grant funds are drawn in 2022. I set up repayment of advances in the 2022 budget, and that will reimburse the general fund and the water fund.
Okay. Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? Is there a motion to proceed?
I'd like to waive the 3 reading rule on 14-21.
There's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 114-21. Is there a second?
One second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
And Mr. God, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I would like to act on 114-21.
It's a motion to act on ordinance 114-21. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 114-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 115-21.
An ordinance to authorize advances from Fund 552, advances within the water fund to the following fund in the amounts listed in section 1.
Okay, you heard Mr. Williams' explanation. Is there a motion to proceed?
I make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 115-21.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 115-21. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Ms. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to act on ordinance 115-21.
A motion to act on ordinance 115-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 115-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 116-21.
An ordinance to amend the 2021 budget through appropriations and fund and interfund transfers attached here to and marked exhibit A.
Mr. Williams.
This is the final budget amendment of the year. It's just mostly miscellaneous adjustments to salary and pension benefit line items. There is a inclusion there of advances from the general fund. This is to appropriate the monies that you approved in the advance in the prior 2 ordinances. That is a new line. There were 27,000, about 20, almost 28,000 in increases. That is being offset with decreases in other line items. So the net impact on the general fund is 0. In the fire levy, we need to increase the fire levy salary by 6,000 and fire overtime by 6,000 for a total of 12. In the police levy fund, police overtime needs increased by 7,000 and part-time dispatchers by 10,000. That is a total of 17,000. And then the advances in the water fund is just appropriating for that, the previous ordinance that you just passed. So we're looking at a grand total increases of $78,304.32.
Any questions or comments regarding this ordinance? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
I make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on 116-21.
The motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 116-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Prokowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I could make a motion to act on ordinance 116-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 116-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 116-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 117-21.
An ordinance to make appropriations for the city of Conneaut, Ohio for the year beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31, 2022, as further described in section 1.
Mr. Hockaday.
You're looking at appropriations.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is the most recent version of our, John has worked tirelessly on this. John can certainly explain some of the more rigid parts of our appropriations. Obviously things like salaries, healthcare, pension benefits, those have all been accounted for and adjusted and inflated for our anticipated 2021 costs, 2022 costs, excuse me. Overall, we operate a fairly lean budget, so most of the actual heavy lifting in terms of the operating expenses are handled through the operating budget, and most of the discretionary expenses are handled through the capital budget. couple of the changes that were discussed when it was kind of indicated that we may not be passing the income tax ordinance. We did remove the street sweeper from the Public Works Department budget, and not be able to sustain the debt service on that with any kind of change in revenue increase. We also modified and backed out the anticipated generator discussion. We have a couple items that we still need to deliver to council in terms of costs. I was not able to secure yet a cost of augmenting the size of the natural gas line to support a larger natural gas driven unit. That'll have to go into the next year. I still think it's a very worthy discussion. And what I'll do is once we have all that information, I'd also like the proprietor that has the system with the capacitors come up and do a presentation for council that's far more adequate than what I can relay in terms of the system's capabilities. Once we have all that information, council could then choose in 2022 to whether or not to reappropriate and make that adjustment for the generator. Overall, this has been a crowded agenda year for 2021. I know it has been very compressed, and as you can see, even with union negotiations hanging out to the very last minute, it's been difficult to have a long and full-threaded discussion of a lot of these. So really, other than our major projects and our capital improvements, it's kind of just a projection of what our 2021 is inflated for cost. I really do want to thank John Williams, who does the lion's share of the lifting on all budgetary items. John is an indispensable element of the city of Conneaut, and he continues to serve with integrity and seriousness. So I do appreciate John. Thank you so much for all your hard work in preparing both of these budgets. Certainly, if you have any other comments or things that you would like to indicate to council, please do so.
Okay, just a few things. I kind of anticipated that the income tax ordinance was not going to pass. So if you look at the transfer line items, I had to increase the transfer line item to 100,000 from the general fund to the Public Works Department. If you look at the, excuse me, the budget summary, it's probably a little bit easier. It gives a picture of, rather than the 30-page report here, it gives you the estimated unencumbered fund balance, estimated revenue for next year, estimated expenses, and our projections for the following year. If that last column is negative at any time, we cannot get certified by the county. Without this transfer included in there for revenue for the Public Works Department, that number would be negative and we would not be able to be certified. So as I said, it looks like we have a sufficient fund balance in there, but it really isn't, because that fund balance is being used to balance the budget. So I did have to increase that line item for the transfers. So, you know, if income tax is more robust next year and we collect additional funding through gas tax and things of that nature, we may not need to transfer it. At this point, I think we probably will. So even though it's budgeted, in order to transfer that cash, we have to have separate ordinances to do that. For the general fund, I'm estimating between 600,000 and 700,000. I put 700,000 on there. As I said, when I gave you the revenue budget, that can be adjusted up until December 31st. Council only passes the appropriation budget, not the revenue budget. But that's my estimate at this time. And then water and sewer are they're probably a little healthier at this time, but they have intense capital needs. So even though you see larger fund balances in excess of $1 million in each one of those, if you look at the projections, they're using significant portions of that fund balance in order to meet their capital requirements. So I just wanted to tell you that. And then, of course, everything's broken up into, you know, general funds, special revenue, capital projects, agency funds, trust funds, that nature. But as far as the operating funds, the weakest fund we have is the street department. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. We're estimating for all funds about $6 million carryover. Estimated revenue next year of about $23.4 million. About $26.4 million in expenses, and an estimated unencumbered balance in all funds of about $3.1 million. So you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, we appreciate all the work you've done on
Thank you.
this, and of
Appreciate
course,
it.
council too. We've been working on this for quite some time, last several weeks, work sessions, so you've had a chance to digest the budget. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion to proceed?
Motion to waive 3 reading rule on ordinance 117.
The motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 117-21. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
We act on 117-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 117-21. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
The ordinance 117-21. Move on to ordinance 118-21.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 10721 passed on December 13, 2021, relating to transient lodging tax definitions and collection of lodging excise tax and declaring an emergency.
Who wants to tackle this?
I'll tackle that one. This is a response to the error that Mr. Moiseo pointed out last meeting regarding the definition of bed and breakfast and short-term rental, which we had referred to a definition provided in an ordinance that's still pending before council. So all this does is in the definition section of the transient lodging tax ordinance defines bed and breakfast and short-term rental, so it stands on its own without referencing the other one. I'm asking you to pass it as an emergency because the one we did pass last week has a loose end on it.
Any questions or comments? And thank you, Mr. Moiseo, for catching that. Is there a motion to proceed?
Like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 118-21.
It's a motion to suspend a 3 reading rule on ordinance 118-21. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
Thank you. I'd like to declare ordinance 118-21 an emergency.
It's a motion to declare ordinance 118-21 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Emery, the emergency has been declared.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 118-21.
So a motion to act on ordinance 118-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
The ordinance 118-21 is passed. Move on to ordinance 119-21.
An ordinance to delete section 935.03C charges and rents generally of the city of Pontiac codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Hey, Mr. Williams? Or?
I'll take this one.
Okay.
So these two actually go together, and the reason we're deleting this particular section is because it's a duplication of the section 11009, which has all the charges. So if you go to chapter 110, every charge or fee or water usage rate or whatever it is charged in Conneaut is in that ordinance. The trouble with having it duplicated in the 93503 is sometimes if you're not careful, they're not going to read the same. So it's simplifying and making it more streamlined to delete the one section in 935 and just keep it all in 110 where everything else is.
Okay, any questions or comments for the law director? Is there a motion to proceed?
I'll make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 119-21.
Motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 119-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Mr. Ledford, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
This time I'd like to declare ordinance 119-21 an emergency.
It's a motion to declare ordinance 119-21 an emergency. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Ledford, the emergency has been declared.
I would like to act on ordinance 119-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 119-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 119-21 is passed. That brings us to our final ordinance for this evening and this year. And that is ordinance 120-21.
An ordinance to amend section 110.09 of the city of Pontiac codified ordinances governing sewage system charges effective January 1, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, who wants to tackle this one?
I'll do that.
Okay.
I did email council the breakdown of the rates for the sewer and the water. We had discussed in previous years about keeping the minimum the same when we institute or implement increases. With the water, the way the water rates are structured, it's easier. If you look at the water rates for the first 2,000 gallons, it's 22.40. We can keep that rate the same. It's 11.20 per 1,000 gallons. And then the next 8,000 gallons, we can add a percentage to that. When you look at the sewer rates, we're not able to do that for several reasons. The way that the rates are constructed, there's a general admin rate, which is a per month cost, and that's to cover the cost of the sewer and water administration. In order to cover that cost, and it doesn't quite do it, but we didn't want to raise it too much, is a 15-cent per month charge. And then if you look at operations, maintenance, and replacement, that's where it's a straight flat rate. There is no ability to adjust that rate. We would have to change the software, and we would also have to dramatically change this rate, or I mean, this structure for the sewer. So when you look at the operations, maintenance, and replacement, we're proposing a 15-cent per 1,000 gallon increase. They have not been raised since January of 17. As I said, if you look at the estimates for next year for the sewer department, even with the $1.5 million carryover, the projection is 600,000 by the end of next year, just because of the capital that's being expended out of that fund. So we definitely need it. It'll probably generate between 40 and 50,000 dollars for operations, maintenance, and replacement. If you look at the debt service, it's a little convoluted the way the formula works, but there's a 1525 minus the 512. It looks like an increase because it went to 1655, but we're also minusing out the 527 per 1,000 gallons. So there is no increase in debt service. The formula as it's presented right now is sufficient to cover all the debt service in this fund. So we're not touching debt service. So when people look at that SDS figure, you're not going to see any difference on that SDS, the sewer debt service. It is strictly operations, maintenance, replacement, and general admin. So what I did was I provided council with just a few different ways of looking at it. So if you look at the minimum user, they're going to see about a 45-cent increase per month. And that works out to about a 2.24. When you hit an average bill, about 3,800, 3,800, it increases or decreases slightly. And then as the more you use, it decreases even more until you get up to around 600,000 gallons or more. But on average, it's about a 2% increase. But that was the only real way to propose this as a cent increase or a dollar increase rather than using a percentage increase like we did for the water.
And again, Mr. Williams, the reason for this is increased chemical costs, operation costs, so on and so forth, correct?
Yes, everything to operate that department, fuel costs, just everything that's associated with the operation of that department. And as I said, the debt service, if you look at the debt service in that fund, it is significant. It's over $500,000. But as I said, this rate is sufficient to cover that debt service. We're just strictly looking at operations.
Okay, any questions or comments? Additional? If not, is there a motion to proceed?
Motion to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 120-21.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 120-21. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to declare ordinance 120-21.
Motion to declare ordinance 120-21 an emergency. Is there a second?
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski, the 3 reading or the emergency has been declared.
I move we act on 120-21.
Motion to act on ordinance 120-21. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo,
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 120-21 is passed. That concludes our ordinances and resolutions for this evening. Move on to unfinished and old business. Okay, I just want to remind everybody that we will be having our organizational meeting on January 3rd. And that is when we'll be sworn in as well. Judge Irochi will be here and I will be sending out the agenda on that shortly. 16 minutes, sorry.
Address any other council work session business, or are we gonna schedule a separate meeting with that?
Yeah, it's gotta be. That's strictly organization.
Okay.
Any other unfinished or old business? Okay, miscellaneous business.
I have one thing this evening. Our very own from our cable advisory board, Mr. Chuck Guglielmo received a award from the Ohio School Board Association, received a media honor roll. And it is for fair and balanced education reporting and exemplary service to our community. So I would just like to congratulate him on that. And congratulations, Mr. Guglielmo.
Very good. Anybody else for miscellaneous business?
Mr. Arcaro, I'd like to thank Mr. Emery for his service on city council,
Yes.
and I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Okay, very good.
Same.
I would like to say it's been a pleasure. You helped me out a bunch. I wish everybody a happy Christmas.
Absolutely.
Like to reiterate that. Congratulations on your
you're removed, and so it's wonderful working with you.
Thank you very much.
We'll miss you.
I feel the same way.
I'd like to
Right.
congratulate you too.
Thank you.
Joey. You really appreciate the time you spend here. And welcome your father coming up next on,
Yeah.
on deck. I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and to remember the reason for the season.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And with all that, Mr. Ray, would you like to come forward?
Yeah. All right.
Going away.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Ms. O'Connor, if you could read the whereases into the record, please.
A proclamation from the office of Conneaut City Council, whereas Joseph Emery was born and raised in the city of Conneaut and graduated from Conneaut High School. Whereas Joseph Emery was appointed to an open seat on Conneaut City Council on October 9, 2017. His time on council included an unprecedented experience of virtual meetings due to a pandemic, and Joe adapted to the changes without issue. Whereas Joe devotedly represents the people in the third ward for over 4 years and helped pass important legislation promoting jobs, the community, and economic development, most notably TIF agreements for the truck world development, funding and lease agreements for the CN dredge facility, funding for Port Authority projects, developing the Conneaut Port and Harbor District, and important updates to the zoning, sewer, property maintenance, and rental codes. Whereas Joe has represented his constituent and the people of Conneaut well, treating everyone with dignity and respect, and consistently demonstrating the highest standards of professionalism and courtesy. Now therefore, the council of the city of Conneaut hereby recognizes Joseph Emery for his service to the city of Conneaut and further wishes him and his family the best in the future. Signed, all of Conneaut City Council, this 20th day of December, 2021.
Well, I really appreciate this. I love serving with each and every one of you. I enjoyed my time. It's been 4 years and I wouldn't have done it any other way. And I feel like we worked so hard to serve the people of the city. And I appreciate what city manager does, what Mr. Williams does, what Mr. Smith does. It was something that I wanted to do. And I feel like everyone, if given the opportunity, should run for public office, should serve the city, should see how it works up here and get this experience, because it was one of the greatest things I've done in my life so far. It's been a very positive experience, and I'm so happy that I could have served the city of Pontiac the way that I did, especially with all of you.
Yes, sir. Good luck.
Okay, is there any other miscellaneous business? Mr. Smith?
Thank you. Just one more thing, and that is that some time ago, I made a promise to somebody, and I wanted to fulfill it. So bear with me for just a minute.
What's he coming back with?
I think I know. I think I know what it is. Yay.
All right, so the strings are still trying to warm up, I think, and the wood is shrinking, whatever it does. And I forgot the rosin, and I'm nervous. I forgot my chin rest.
Entertainment for today.
I love it. I love it.
Happy Judge anniversary,
Egged him on this afternoon.
Well, the citizens can't say they weren't entertained. Right?
I really found this out. haven't
As long as we're the YouTube views.
I hope Becky's watching this. I won't be able to explain
I? Nobody will. The real musician here is John.
Oh, all right.
That was awesome.
Thank you,
Thank
Kyle.
you for
Thank you,
that.
Kyle.
That was perfect.
I usually play this with a couple glasses of wine. And the people listening to it have also had a couple. Thank you for your forbearance.
I love it.
That was very fitting for the season.
Yes.
And we appreciate that. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry and safe Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Merry
Christmas,
Christmas.
everybody.
So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro?
Yes.
Mr. Emery?
Yes.
Mr. Goff?
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski?
Yes.
Mrs. Lightford?
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo?
Yes.
Mr. Prokowski?
Yes.
Okay, City Council for 2021 is adjourned. Thank you all.